Who's Paul?
So you didn't pick any walk-on music.
I guess I didn't.
Yeah.
I know.
I feel like Tristan walking onto Kanye really kind of set the bar.
If I have a long night, I'm like Tristan's devious little brother in the morning. I have a raspy, like, yeah, girl, what's going on? I do that voice.
All right. Good. All right. Let's start with, I wanted to start with iBeacon, actually, because it's been a year, right, since you were one of the first retailers to kind of do the big rollout.
It's been about a year, yeah.
About a year. I think it was mid-Feb last year. Just like, what's your experience been? Kind of what are the things that are working? How have you used the data that's coming in?
So for me, and the digital team, it's very political, we'll say, very diplomatic, because what we want to do is quietly tag all these customers, we'll say, right, that are coming into a store, interacting with us, not necessarily with, an app, which we'll release, of course, but we want to understand who they are and connect that back into somewhere centralized where digital is actually getting communication out on behalf of retail.
Yeah.
And that specific message could change. That segment of customers could see, instead of the buy now, click here, shop now, it's, hey, come back and see us at the store.
Right.
And it allows us to build a partnership with the other P&L, the retail operations side.
Yeah, and defining who your customers are is sort of a big part of who you are as a brand.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's the hardest thing in the world to do.
So who would you say is like the Alex Anani customer? Like what is she?
Female with a wrist.
Right.
Honestly, that is the true answer.
We
have products that are applicable to literally every household in America. So if you look at what I would call the strength of our business, it's the product-driven partnerships we have with organizations, NFL, Major League Baseball. We make a product for every single team. And you combine that with our core product, which is very symbolic in nature. So it's zodiacs, and it's birthstones, and it's the mom charm. You add some fashion in there, and all of a sudden you've got 10 bangles on your wrist, teens to moms.
Doesn't that make sort of this brand voice part a little bit difficult? Because kind of like, hey, you throw something out there, it's gonna stick. Because everybody, you could find my mom as a customer. You could also find my grandma as a customer. How do you figure out what you're gonna say and who are you gonna say it to? Is it a matter of different messaging? Is it a matter of one messaging?
Short-term strategy, which is it's really finding out who the most attractive customer is, and we'll say that's the most influential customer because it's the younger, fashion-forward girl that's influencing everybody in her life to buy her Alex Anani. And her mother will discover the brand through her, start buying for herself and maybe her friends, her sisters, her aunts, doesn't matter. That's that hybrid, that ideal customer. But the challenge is, we can't run the math on our CRM for .com or our CRM for point of sale and say, here's the girl we want, because our most attractive customers never spend a dime with us.
What do you mean?
Our most attractive customer in terms of who they are and what they wear and what they have an ability to influence in terms of brand discovery, sharing with their world. We can't look them up and see how much money they've spent, because most of those girls, they're gifted Alex Anani. It's an addiction.
Yeah.
They're on the site. They're bouncing around. They're so engaged with the brand, but everybody knows what to get them for their birthday and their Christmas and Hanukkah and Valentine's Day, you name it.
I think that's where your storytelling part of your business comes into play. Because I know that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. Because Alex Anani is a really good story. There's a lot of history. You can talk a lot about who you are. You have a lot of cause-based marketing. You do a lot of that stuff. How do you kind of get those messages across? How do you decide what your story is going to be and sort of let it evolve over time?
Absolutely massive commitments to internal labor and obviously scaling out to agency relationships. So we want to tell the story constantly. So as you indicated, we're built on authenticity, and no matter how big we are, and we did 230 million last year, and we crossed that this year. We have 40-some stores. .com is the biggest, not the biggest, but the fastest growing, for a reason. So when we look at the charity story, we partner up with organizations to make products like American Red Cross and Heart and Stand Up to Cancer, and it's co-branded, so it's their charm or their logo on the charm. They get it out to their organizations, and donations go back to the respective organizations as a result of sales. We share it with our customers as well. So I think we're coming up on the $20 million mark that we've donated back to charity.
How
And
do
that's our Charity by Design program.
Right. How do you get that? How do you get the word out there? What is your preferred sort of method of?
The preferred is when a partner that has a tremendous reach does marketing, does the
Right.
getting the word out, newsletters, social for us.
Is social a big sort of? It's obviously a big one. I mean, you guys had the shoppable Instagram, which was awesome. You could go on there, you could like what you wanted, and shop from what you liked.
We probably have triple the size of in terms of social media. We have triple the team size of our peer group. I think double the average with all of specialty retail. So we have about 30 people on digital, dedicated to just digital, and it's the P&L plus it's the experience side, the P&L for e-com plus experience. So our going back to authenticity, our founder Carolyn Raffaelian, she hails from a manufacturing family in Rhode Island, and that's where the company's based. At one point, it was the world's capital for costume jewelry. So we're doing a lot to revive that. So the story, being able to tell that Made in America story, and the jobs, kind of kicking these factories back in gear that were abandoned because of the Far East. It's a big part of the story. There's an eco-friendly component as well. It's a lot of recycled materials. But telling that story and we have constant need for content, but being able to match content to segments, ultimately is where we want to be.
Yeah. And
when brands have all sorts of product history, purchase history, browsing behavior, and they can match those stories accordingly. We don't want to turn off the socialite in New York because she goes to the website and the homepage says something with the Super Bowl, right? Because we're going to the Super Bowl, we have products, we have a big partnership with NFL, but it might turn her off. But you also have an absolute fanatic that has the pink New York Yankees charm and the blue one and the gold, and it's having that information is so powerful, and I think that's one of the largest, I don't want to say failures at this stage, but all these brands, they're launching experiences and they're exactly the same every single time. So you and I download an app right now, we check it a week later at lunch, and we're doing the same thing, we're seeing the same content. It's crazy.
Yeah, so is personalization a big part, obviously, of what you guys do?
We kind of invested in reverse. We invested in data 5 years ago. We were doing programmatic 5 years ago when we launched .com.
Yeah.
And I don't have a typical retail background, so I'm not going to take all the credit, but the investments that we're seeing now, it's the attribution question, right?
Right.
We were doing attribution with a PhD in econometrics from MIT. That was an engagement, because there is no one size fits all. There's no software you can just plug in and do it. It takes a lot of work no matter what. So if you do it through a vendor or you sort of test your own models, it's never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
So going in reverse, I had some exposure to the Valley. I had exposure to venture capital, hedge funds, investment banking. So our team is structured in a very unique way. So we take, we actually analyze public companies just like a hedge fund, a quantitative, algorithmic hedge fund.
Someone called you an investment bank. You do it like an investment banker.
Some of the same approaches. I assign publicly traded retailers to almost every member of my team to follow, and they're on every earnings call, and they're looking at looking at source code, or they're putting a ghostery on to see. I love these questions. The Zappos question earlier. Who are you using? Download ghostery in the browser. It pops up. It's crazy. By the way, Lisa, I don't know where you are, but I think we absolutely kill it on Zappos. If you really want to talk about a partnership, we can connect our DMPs together to measure our audience, so the journey can start there and end up in Alex Nani and vice versa. Never share customer data. If you can make that decision right now, I'll
Wow. And it
you know
has
what
to
I'll do?
happen now.
Some
like right
icing
now.
on the cake for you. I will double down with all the co-op dollars that we're putting in place.
Yeah, this is all on the record. All right. Going back to what you were saying about getting your internal teams in place. I think we're hearing a lot about organizational issues. We're hearing a lot about getting buy-in from different parts of the company. People not understanding what you do. Did you go through any of that? What were some of the organizational internal challenges?
Well, I left the hedge fund business and met our founder just by accident, and she was one store, and that's where it started. So I didn't have to sell up. It's always been a centralized digital strategy, and the data's always been in one place. The web analytics and customer analytics, campaign analytics, one place across channels. That includes the stores as well. So every time we're an eco-friendly company. Every time we send out an e-receipt, which is like 90% of the time, we're getting a capture rate. We're able to model that journey. I mean, the difficulty is the gift giving and as it relates to the end consumer, but we're able to model that journey from store to e-com to anything else that's digital, not a transactional.
Yeah. The gift giving thing seems like it's a thing that keeps coming up. I mean, what are you going to do to fix that? Is there
I think,
what are the
I'll tell you what my largest issue, the company's largest issue is too many people are buying Alex and Ani the same product for the same recipients. So think, wish list meets like a bridal registry. So that as a gift giver, you're engaging with a store associate or you're online and you're purchasing something that you know is not purchased, if it's real time, of course, by somebody else in their lives.
Right.
So that's a major issue. And again, it's just it's such a high repeat purchase rate. I think we were going to the wholesale side on the sort of Nordstrom and Bloomingdale's end, we set records for both of those. Yeah. Whether it was first to 10 million or quickest to 10 million ever on Bloomingdale's.com, or highest repeat purchase rate in the category for Nordstrom, whatever the stat is. So including that, looking full discovery at wholesale, which is the point of wholesale. It's very cheap for us relative to the manual labor of building out stores, and we're going as fast as we can to do a deal, right? West Coast, let's be in every Nordstrom in the country, every Bloomingdale's in the country. Yeah. But to be able to model that and provide a true ROI on the relationship, fantastic. So we're now just having these conversations, and now I guess we're going to talk to Zappos about it too.
Where you are is a big part of your brand voice. I mean, it's where you find out, beyond just your store, like the Nordstrom, choosing where to be. How did those decisions come about? Like, how are you guys strategizing around those?
It's in the beginning. I mean, we were kind of a startup in the beginning. So when you're small, we did 14 million after that first year, and we jumped to 80 and then 230. So when you grow that fast, sometimes you take a little risk. And I'm not gonna lie and say there was a sophisticated strategy with store selection. There's a little bit of sort of following the polo scene. So it was Rhode Island, Newport, Rhode Island, up to Boston and down to Palm Beach and Saratoga Springs. So it was Hamptons, a little bit of that. And then a little bit of just sort of throwing darts at the board. And then finding creative ways to do store rollouts. We've got some partnerships in Vegas. We'll have 4 locations in Vegas alone. Miracle Mile, 20 million people a year that walk past that location.
What was the creative rollout in Vegas when you started?
I can't really comment to Vegas, but we did participate in the Life is Beautiful festival. Very great music festival. I just can't remember.
All right. All right, that tells us what we need to know. Let's talk about just favorite platforms. We already spoke about Instagram. What do you guys do in terms of getting that brand voice out on different platforms? What's your favorite? What actually turns those sort of people who are looking at it into actual customers?
I'm a bull on Twitter for a very particular reason, and it goes back to sort of the authenticity. Carolyn, our founder, CEO, and then creative lead, when she was one store owner, right? She was always in the store. She was interacting with customers. She was, back and forth, texting customers. We had an issue, right? Charm broke, whatever. She was really hands-on. And when we started digital, the mandate from her was, no matter how big we become, the social team, the engagement team, social engagement is pegged to basically to the volume coming in. So we're always building, and we're always trying to, like, no tweet goes unanswered type of deal. Try it. Try at Alex and Ani right now, see what happens. So we have a huge social listening operation. Okay. So we're pulling in everything, whether it's at tweet or we're pulling in some competitive. When people are talking about our competitors, whoever they depending on the category, of course. We try to insert ourselves into conversation, and sometimes it ends up. We're not going to know for years, right? We're not going to know the real value, but that team is always on. So I think we do a lot of service via social. Okay. So that I think that's been. That's helped us with our growth, because there was a point last year, holidays, where nobody could get through to the call center. Just lines were overwhelmed.
So that's where people turn.
So you turn to Facebook, you turn to Twitter, and sometimes people will complain, and if we're quick to resolve it, we're probably doing a 180 with the customer.
Yeah. Are you a fan of real-time marketing?
I am, absolutely. So we're were big.
And I mean real time, not the
Yeah,
kind that
you know,
you plan out
I
'cause
was-
you know this is happening.
I was at, I just came from Sundance Film Festival, and we did like sort of a celebrity gifting suite, and we had teams in Rhode Island stationed. They were sending in pictures, and they were doing celebrity ID and research on social credentials, and just getting pictures out in real time. And we were going to the Super Bowl as well, so we were planning sort of Super Bowl, our Super Bowl real-time strategy at Sundance when we were sort of real-time live content Sundance. And what was interesting to us is, you know, my team is on the East Coast, my team's in New York, the other team's in Rhode Island, and nobody thought about this blizzard. The blizzard was real time.
Yeah.
And the impact area was, call it, you know, 20% of our business, our e-commerce penetration, about 20%. So when I look at the e-com side, it's heavy New England and heavy New York Metro. So I said, guys, what are we doing customers need, you know, forget campaign. This is not campaign. What are we doing to tell customers what to do? Because we care about them, of course. So maybe we can bring in a charity, American Red Cross, right? So this thing kind of came up, and then within 3 hours we had a mock-up and got it out to everybody in New England, which we've got segments. Right. So it was, you know, here's a checklist, you know, check on your neighbors, make sure you get batteries, whatever, and support the Red Cross. So you have to be real time.
Yeah. So you were working on this the day of?
I just asked the question, like, what are we doing about the blizzard? And then it happened. So sometimes I ask the question, but most of the time my team will come up with ideas. All they do is, you know, they scenario plan for every opportunity, every possible opportunity.
The service part of the real-time marketing is an interesting one, because I think that's the line they had to walk. You couldn't just gotta be like, why don't you shop for some jewelry while you're, you know, holed up inside? That wouldn't work for your brand.
Brands are very, it wouldn't, no, but brands are very scared to invest in the labor. It's call center type mentality, but we do it with authenticity. So the more time, it's not like a macro auto responder, copy paste. It's an actual human. It's, you know, it's somebody having a conversation, and the more time that they spend with our founder, the more authentic that voice is. So it's tough to do, but it's easy to justify with a founder-led company who happens to be creative and really into customers.
Yeah. So very bullish on Twitter. You obviously like Instagram, Facebook.
So Instagram is obviously my favorite.
Okay.
I think Facebook's done some wonderful things with Atlas. So we'll get to a point where we'll all be able to see the actual value of Instagram, organic and paid, of course.
Right.
So it's, you know, we've got a dedicated Instagram girl. We've got we've got a Snapchat girl.
Ah.
So just sort of running around behind the scenes with photo shoots. I'm sure we did one yesterday in New York and had to shut it down a little early, but I'm sure we get some great stuff behind the scenes. Alex and Ani on Snapchat.
Cool. Awesome. I think we have a couple of minutes for questions. If there are any.
We are actually going to have questions
right.
breakouts later. But thank you for a very good session.
Thank you.